we think about the future a lot, as it turns out. I don't know what the percentage is, but I've been talking to this about people sometime and this week, and some people are saying, well, I think about the future about 50% of the time. Some people say, no, I think about the future 70% of the time. That seems like a big number until you think about the fact that we're thinking about appointments, tasks, plans, meals, caretaking, retirement, holidays, vacation, travel, investment planning. We're thinking about the future all the time, even when we go shopping. This week I went on to Amazon and they had a special on inflatable kayaks. And I pictured myself in the inflatable kayak. My whole purchasing was about this vision, this fantasy. I saw myself going down. I pictured the little dock down there by the bridge. I saw myself getting the thing inflated and launching out with this inflatable kayak. And so I was ready to buy this inflatable kayak for this wonderful romantic vision of the future in which I would take this inflatable kayak out and it would look perfect. And then I looked at the weight rating on the kayak. We think about the future a lot, and it's all a lot of what yeah. It turns out, scientists say, however, that when we think about the future, we're actually remembering it. All right, hang on, I'm going to talk about it. So in the Scientific American in 2012, there was an article called Memories of Tomorrow. And researchers found that the same part of your brain that is about memory is the same, really some of the same neurons were firing about the future as about the past, about memories of the past. It turns out that we have a future in mind and then we rehearse it in our heads. We remember a future. I put together all my memories of a kayak and all my memories of inflatability, and I put all those together, and I'm actually remembering this future that I am thinking about. So we construct our futures. Our futures are sort of remembered, and we train ourselves to think about what the future is going to look like. And this is very critical for those of us who are in the faith business, because we can choose to construct and reinforce and remember a future that is either filled with fear or either filled with joy. We can decide to tell each other stories so that we will remember the joy and trust that God has for us in the future. Or we can tell ourselves stories about how rotten and cataclysmic the world is and how it is about to end in fire. We can stoke the flames of hell by talking about a future in which there is suffering, deprivation, and isolation. We can talk about the future until we begin to get afraid and imagine that these things are actually going to happen. And how would we prepare for this future of threat and fear? We would build more defenses, more walls. We would get even more isolated. There would be violence. We would build fallout shelters. We would have panic rooms. We would have gated communities. We would cut ourselves off from one another out of fear. We would call some people enemies, almost arbitrarily. We would have weapons of all kinds, economic and projectile. Our fear would develop guns and greed. All right, I have to talk about guns. My brother, my honored brother in the faith, Jerry Falwell, said something this week that I have to rebuke. He was delivering a talk to some of the students at Liberty University and made a point of the fact that he had a handgun in his back pocket. And he said, and I think this is a quote, "I've always thought if more good people had concealed carry permits," and the association is, "and carried weapons, then we could end those Muslims before they walked in and kill them." And he was cheered. I rebuke this understanding of our faith. I believe it to be an incomplete understanding of the gospel. I believe it's an incomplete understanding of human frailty, in which if all of us in this room had loaded handguns in our back pocket, I think I would be more afraid than anything. Because there's that day when you're kind of grumpy and you wake up and you're all very nice people, but I know, you know. We have a name for it in Calvinism. It's called total depravity, but don't get excited about that. It just means that some of us are more grumpy than others at some time. Okay, that's a shorthand. But, yeah, we can't imagine that there is an enemy that we can eliminate through violence. That's just not what Jesus has in mind. We can't imagine that there is this external enemy that if we could only get rid of it, it would solve all of our problems, because it has to do with us, this reign of God, this kingdom of God. But we have sort of been trained into this fearfulness about the future, and it's been training us in our popular culture. In the last 10 years, there have been over 100 movies about zombies. And these zombies do not have our best interests at heart. This is a view of the future that is cataclysmic, and the zombies are coming to get us, and oh my gosh, and we got to get guns, and we have to build big enclaves to keep them out, and these are the zombies that are going to get us, and this is the future, the zombie future. And this, I know it sounds crazy, but it's sort of, after you watch 100 movies like this, or you watch The Walking Dead for its 16 episodes, for instance, or, you know, you start imagining that this is the future, that we are threatened by these forces of evil that will come and eat our brains. But no, it works on us. In short, the stories we tell ourselves about the future work on us, and the future that is being painted by some politicians and some religious leaders and some folks that just talk about the future is that we want to get more hard to get to. We want to get someplace and have a gun in our hand and build a wall and get in a trench and down and isolate and close it in, and just us and maybe our family and maybe not even our family, because our brother-in-law, we're not so sure about him. And it gets closer and closer until our world is smaller and smaller and the future is more fearful. And oh, my friends, that is not the future God has in mind. That is not the future that we are called to prepare for. We are not called to prepare for the future of God by building a fallout shelter or a panic room. We are called to be a people of hope that build a different kind of future, a future of joy, of sufficiency, of relationship, where the stranger is welcomed. Come on in. Where food is shared, not hoarded. We prepare for this future by developing habits of trust and working through conflicts. There will be some. Not everybody's going to agree with us. They will be wrong, of course. But we will work through these things. We will figure out healing. We will work on ways, because, you know, when the mountains are made low and the valley, it's not easy. These are major earth-moving events. But what we do is we make straight the highway so that God can get to us all, so that we can get to each other. This path that we beat to each other's hearts will be made easy in the future. Not panic rooms, not fortresses, not armed defense, but a defenselessness, A highway, not a moat. A dinner party, not a war. And us religious types, you're here in this room, so you're a religious type. I know that's disturbing for some of you. So us religious types need to be careful about the way that we talk about the future, that we have to talk about the future in terms of the kingdom of heaven, of the relationship of heaven. We need to talk more about what God calls us to move in the direction of following this place that Jesus, this time that Jesus points to, and not so much about the hell and the demons who are tormenting us, and we've done that sometimes. I don't know why we did it quite so much, but we talked about the future as if it might be hell, and it's our job to talk about the future as the reign of God, the place where God waits for us and our children and our infants. And so we imagine and have symbols that talk about the future like this. That this is a sharing in which Christ invites all to participate. That this is the sharing, the banquet, the bits of food and juice that are not hoarded, but that are distributed. Come on, have some. That this is the gracious invitation of the future. That this is the symbol that we celebrate. That is not we're all alone in this little fearful place, but that this is the breadth of the banquet of God. That this is what we celebrate, that God is arriving in the future, not in some way that draws us in, but in a way that draws us out, wonderfully, joyfully, spreading good news and tidings. This is not an empty symbol, but this is how we remember the future. This is how we remember and enact again what the future is like, how we yearn for its arrival, how we again act it out. It's a feast. This thing about God is not fear, is joy for us and our children. And we act it here with little pieces of bread that we all take together, little bits of juice that we all. This is the joy of the reign of God. And we need to stand and speak out about this trust and, yes, this faith. In the midst of all of the messages of fearfulness, in the midst of all of the messages of hate and division and making enemies instead of destroying enemies with our love so that they're our friends. This is the message that we bring to the world. It will be difficult because, it seems the language, the words seem to be getting more strident. But we are people of the Word, and we have symbols, and we have words, and we have an open heart, and we can be people of faith to take a stand for the joy of the future. Friends, believe the good news of the gospel. In the name of the Creator, the Redeemer, and the Sustainer,